a great concept to me.
Yeah, you're probably the right age to know all those shows.
Yeah,
I bet you were, I
I'm
bet you were,
52, so
yeah,
back when they were on, I was a huge fan, and I
right.
still watch them on YouTube like daily, pretty much.
I have grandchildren. I'd love to get them interested in Science Court, but they probably would like it if it wasn't my idea, you know?
Well, and Hopeless Pictures was a fun show. I really
So the
enjoyed
Bob
that,
Balaban thing, yeah.
and especially too home movies because I got to talk with Brendan Small one time. What a great, interesting guy he
Can we
was.
Yeah.
hold, Jeffrey, let's hold this off till we get to your part. This is so, Jeffrey is so knowledgeable about you. This is too interesting to talk about yet. Hold up.
You got it.
We're live. Facebook, welcome to Comic Spot. Today, we have the legend that is Jonathan Katz. He's here in the house with us. He's feeling very summery. He's wearing the identical glasses I'm wearing. Jeffrey Peterson, the 420 comic here, is my co-interviewer because Jeffrey is such a fan of Jonathan Katz. Welcome, Jonathan. Woo!
Hey, Linda, thank you for your hospitality. How's the light on me?
Perfect. If
Okay.
I mean, it could be a little better if the light wasn't coming from behind you, but it's not an issue. You're looking great.
Okay.
It's great. So you're a writer, a producer, you've had shows all over the planet. Jeffrey will get into that, the meat of all your career. I want to go back to Jonathan Katz and your heritage. Your parents came over from Hungary, I understand.
Well, my paternal parents said my mother was actually born in Minsk, Russia.
That's where my grandmother passed away.
Oh, really?
Yes. So tell me about Minsk.
Well, the first time I went to Minsk, no, I've never been, I know nothing about Minsk. For me, it's just a password.
So funny. So
But and your parents, Linda, I'm guessing, have passed away.
yes. And yours?
Yes. Well, my mom died when I was 16 years old. And if John Benjamin was on this call, he would say, "What took you so long?" Because I usually bring that up within the first 30 seconds. But she smoked 3 packs of Camels, died in November, smoked for another 6 months. That's what I'm looking for. Now I'm looking up.
Oh my gosh.
How do you take tragedy and manage to make it so hilarious?
Well, it's I don't know, Linda. I can't really answer the question.
I have a new line. This is the only other thing I'm going to say about myself, I promise. My new joke is, good news, my parents survived the Holocaust. And the crowd, they tighten up and I say, yeah, okay, the good news is it was the Holocaust that did exist.
I like that.
Thank you.
That's like the best response you're going to get from me. Probably most comedians, I'm sure you heard the phrase "that's funny," which is a comedian's way of laughing.
You're doing good if you can get another comedian to laugh.
Hey, Linda, how long have you yourself been doing comedy?
7 years.
Right.
With a brain injury. So unlike you, I really haven't been successful at coming out with my different ability on stage. So I'm kind of a closeted brain injury survivor, where you have taken your different ability with MS and managed to really make it work for you.
I actually have an MS act, which is totally different than my act. but I used to get paid by a pharmaceutical company to perform for people living with MS.
That's so cool.
I stopped doing it because I wouldn't mention the name of the drug they were trying to get me to sell. I
Yes,
didn't want to be a drug whore. But
exactly.
can you tell me something about your brain, the problem that your brain has functioning?
Yes. So I've been doing comedy 7 years with brain trauma. Is that 7?
Yes.
And it took me 6 years to get to my brain to the point where I could even memorize material. Jeffrey knows I've had to look at notes on stage, which is like losing the audience.
Linda, I bring notes on stage. I've been doing comedy for 30 years and I bring notes on stage. I would love to get rid of them, but so it affects your memory and how else are you affected?
I forget who I'm going home with. I'm sorry, that's a joke.
The joke.
I
Take it.
have trouble. They say that the part of the brain that organizes, so I refuse to be a victim of a brain injury. So if you tell me what's wrong, I will make it work. I'll find a way. Just tell me what's wrong. And so I found a way to make myself organize. They said I'd never remember anything ever, and I'd never be able to organize anything or remember. And I proved them wrong.
But what was your diagnosis?
You ready? Are you sitting down?
Yep.
It's mild dementia due to brain trauma
That's crazy.
from a drunk driver.
A drunk driver?
I got it for free.
Wow. Yeah, my wife was when she was younger a neuroanatomist, so she could explain what's wrong with both of us for free.
We could go on tour together.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about your childhood. Who encouraged you and your funny bone, please? People want to know this.
I was not a particularly funny kid, you know. In fact, I was a depressed kid.
Really?
Yeah, and even in grade school, I was like in elementary school in New York City. I was depressed, and fortunately, I had a crush on this depressed girl. And at recess, we would pass each other suicide notes.
Oh my gosh.
And how'd that turn out?
Well, I'm happy now, you know.
What made you do comedy then?
Well, you know, I started out as a musician. I had a band called Katz and Jammers. I shouldn't say started out. I started out as a table tennis player. I was the New York State champion in 1964, and I stopped, even though it was lucrative. I had to give it up. And when I say lucrative, I once got paid $200 for winning a tournament, which was enough to pay the bus fare to get back to New York. But I was in music for a long time. I wrote songs and I performed with the band Katz and Jammers. And that's still a big part of my life, music.
What's your favorite instrument to play that you can talk about?
The lap steel guitar. Do you know what that is?
I know that Jeffrey's been in bands.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Jeffrey, do you know the lap steel?
I do. And you play that with a cow magnet, or do you like
With a slide.
a magnet?
Because my right hand is pretty good. My left hand is extremely slow. So I can pick the chords, and then the slide will change the chord.
Yeah, it's a very unique approach to guitar, and it's really neat.
Yeah, it was the opening sound of the show Breaking Bad for many episodes. The first sound you heard was a slide guitar.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's your instrument, Jeffrey?
I was the lead singer of a heavy metal band back in the Sunset Strip hair metal days.
Have you seen this movie about this heavy metal guy who is losing his hearing?
No,
Oh, it's a wonderful movie. There's nothing, I wish there's no joke involved. It's just a really good movie.
I am familiar with it. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a guy that's
I think, I think
and
it's,
that really happens. That really happens to people.
Yeah.
You know.
I used to sit much too, I was friends with the guy who played bass for Hall & Oates, and I sat much too close to the monitors for many years and messed with my hearing.
Yeah.
There's one last question I have, and then I'll give it over to Jeffrey. I want to know, you didn't find people to be your audience right out of the gate.
No.
That's been the trajectory of me and a lot of people trying to find our voice, trying to find an audience. Can you speak to that for the people that are comedians? Because that's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that for me, rather than having a larger audience when I started, I wanted to perform for the people who enjoyed my comedy and increase the size of that number. But when I would get on stage in the early days, I never felt like I was what the audience had in mind. I felt like I was in a tutu performing for a bunch of pirates. So, it took me a while to find my audience. They came to me ultimately.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was the turning point that made that happen in your mind?
Dr. Katz.
Take it away, Jeffrey. It's all yours.
Well, that's where I really discovered your great comedy. And I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of not only comedic TV, but sitcoms in general. And there's two go-to sitcoms that I go to make me feel better when I'm not feeling very good. One is Bob Newhart,
Right.
and the other is Dr. Katz. And you're both therapists, and for some reason, the tone of your voice and Bob Newhart, you guys are just so funny, but in such a subtle way that not to compare you to him, but I just like it. For some reason, I love the medium of a therapist talking to these crazy people, and while you're maintaining your own sanity.
Yeah, I like the way you're describing it. What the thing I loved about Bob Newhart was his one-sided phone calls, and that's
Yes.
from his stand-up act.
Yes, and he used that in every medium of all the different shows he was on. Of all of his shows, it is his pretty much his calling card, right?
Yeah, no pun intended. You just made a great pun. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, I did. It's calling card, yes. The thing is, I was an animator for years, and I loved the squiggle vision that Tom Schneider really created, and it actually caused some controversy when it came out, because people were like, "This is hard to watch." This show is kind of where I find it to be really innovative. So what do you think of squiggle vision?
Well, we discovered, we did some research, and for every 10 people who didn't like it, there were 12 people who didn't mind it that much. But the interesting thing about squiggle vision for me was that it looked like a homemade show. Looked like it was a couple of teenagers messing around in their basement. And it also, not to get too techie, it was done with an MS-DOS program.
Mm-hmm.
And it was based on human error. Seriously, that was the whole idea, was that if you drew something 100 times, a particular character's face,
yeah,
and there was a slight difference each time,
mm-hmm.
that would make it vibrate.
Yeah, and the vibration gave it a certain like energy. It actually seemed like people were more alive than
Yeah.
traditional animation.
But if you look at the show carefully, nobody's going anywhere. They're just
Nobody's going anywhere. They're standing there shaking. It's like
it's just shot like a movie, like point of view, Dr. Katz, point of view,
right.
Ray Romano.
Yeah. That
and
leads me.
each
That leads me to my next question.
Yeah.
You just said Ray Romano, one of your great recurring patients on the Dr. Katz professional therapist show. Who made you laugh? Like, who were some of the patients that you particularly found funny?
Oh, Gary Shandling,
Oh, he was so great. Yeah,
Ray Romano, Dom Irera.
Dom.
Yeah.
Just I've spent time with Dom. He is the exact character on your show. That is who he is.
Yep. He could be inappropriate even in a fake
Yes.
therapist office.
Oh my God. I've been astonished sitting next to him saying, "Did you really just say that in public?" I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
But what was great is you not only had these great comedians, but David Duchovny and these great actors and like Jeff Goldblum and like
Right.
Bob Balaban. That was so neat that you brought in these great actors. Catherine O'Hara.
We did 81 episodes, and during that time, I made one woman cry and one person feel better.
Oh my gosh.
So that's not a bad track record for a therapist.
And some of the patients that you had were are really nutty people in real life. A Bob Goldthwait, there's just so many like different characters that you had. Is there somebody that you thought really needed like psychological help?
Oh, all of them.
All of them.
Comedians are not famous for their mental health. That what they need, what we need is, what we're looking for is adulation, and that's not healthy. I promise you.
Yeah. Well,
Do you
I
have
thought it was a brilliant concept.
Jeff? Do you have a family?
I do. I have, not a big family. No, I don't have any children or anything. No.
Yeah, my wife and I have two beautiful kids.
Uh-huh.
Couple of kids not so attractive, but that's just the roll of the dice. Yeah, I think one of the problems with Dr. Katz is that when we first started, I took my role as a therapist much too seriously. Then I realized at some point, one of the executives working on the show said, Jonathan, you're allowed to be funny too. And that was so liberating. This is a guy named John Fisher who said that. But I forget what my point was. What was your question?
I was talking about the fact that you had different, you got actors on there at
Yeah, but
not only comedians, but you were, there was these great actors that were, so it was really diversifying. The show was spreading out, and the neat thing too is that Dr. Katz had other there was a subplots with Julia and with Julie and Stanley over at the bar there, which was really neat. That was a great aspect of the show because you got to see you off of work.
But my favorite part of the show is my relationship with my son, John Benjamin.
Yeah.
Who was the first guy who, when I did stand up for 15 years and the audience liked it, the club owner liked it because they were making money, but I did not enjoy it. And then when I met John Benjamin, he showed me a way to enjoy doing comedy.
Yeah.
Which was improvisation. And he was so good at it. And we spent so many hours just laughing together.
Well,
and getting paid.
Yeah. And I mean, the chemistry is, the chemistry between Ben and Dr. Katz is really one of my favorite father-son characters of all time on television. And John Benjamin has become one of the top voiceover actors in history. But he'll, no matter what he does, if he's McGurk or if he's Bob, he's always Ben to me. I always hear Ben.
Because he doesn't really adjust his voice. It's just the way he's drawn, you know?
Yeah. And
he
really gets it. He really gets it.
Yeah, as McGurk, he adjusted his voice because of the character, but not in the other shows.
Well, that leads me to Brendan Small. You were part of Home Movies, and you were a big part of that. Brendan Small is, to me, a very talented guy and innovative. What was it like working with him?
Well, you know, my role in that show was just an occasional appearance as Melissa's father.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I played, yeah. So I didn't play a big role in that show, but I love Brendan's musicianship, among other things. I think he wrote the theme song for that show.
Yes.
And he's into heavy metal.
Right. He's got his show called Metalocalypse that became very famous. Yep.
And he's a good guy.
That's great.
Good night. No, I'm not going anywhere.
Well, to keep things on schedule.
Yep.
Your time's going to be up pretty soon, and you've done an amazing job, Jeffrey, of drawing out and relating to Dr. Katz, Jonathan Katz.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. So what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to turn the floor over to you, Jonathan Katz, to say anything to people in a terrible time we're going through, how to survive, or how to thrive with a different ability, or how to make it in the business, or how to get through the pandemic and live your life and not judge it. Anything you want to say to anybody in the human race. You get to close out the show.
Are you talking about can you say the human race again?
Yes.
Because you didn't grow up in New York City, right?
I visited and lived there twice for 2 years.
Because in New York, it's the human race.
Yes.
But I'm more comfortable talking about comedy, to tell you the truth, than the pandemic. I'm not,
Sure.
I'm lucky enough to be quarantining with my wife, who is an extraordinary woman. But I can't recommend that to everybody. It wouldn't be fair to her.
You don't want to share your wife.
No.
Oh my.
We occasionally share a phone number, and that's hard. She has all these women friends who are in love with her. And when I answer the phone, it's hello. So they realize it's me, and then business. But, I think I could, my kind of comedy is very efficient. And I try to give the audience as little information as they need to get a joke.
What a talent.
Well, it's not just me. It's the audience has to take credit to some of that. But, I think, and I never really thought of myself as a guy who does one-liners, but then all of a sudden I noticed I have so many of them. Like my aunt was cremated. I blew that joke already. My aunt died last week. She was cremated, and we think that's what did it. It's a very efficient joke.
I love that. I love one-liners.
Yeah. But one day I heard Jerry Seinfeld explaining to David Letterman the difference between a joke and a bit. And I guess depending on how much time you need to do, you get more mileage out of a bit. I do have some bits. I talk about living on my grandfather's farm when I was a kid, where he had a low-budget freak show. He had he was competing with with the Barnum and Baileys of the world, but he couldn't really do it financially. So he had a bearded man. He had he couldn't afford a fat lady. He had a woman who was premenstrual, a little bloated, and no Siamese twins, just two guys with a joint checking account.
See, those type of things illustrated in animation were just so great to me.
Yeah.
I loved seeing your humor. Like I was trying to tell Linda the polar bear joke, and
Right.
you know, you've got so many just great like jokes that are not complicated, that are just really great, simple jokes, and I love you for that. Those are the best.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm so glad. It's nice to meet a fan. But when you animate, what kind of do you do? Flash animation?
I did traditional animation. I did the old light board and stuff like that. I grew up in an animation family. So it became a family business, and it was something I always wanted to do. So really, when I saw your show, I thought maybe I could take this and become a comedian. And then I tried to become a comedian because I saw your show.
You know, I did a show for Disney and Touchstone, and what was great about, many things were great about that show. But my favorite thing was they signed off on an audio script. They didn't see anything on paper. They just would sign off on an edited audio script before they would go to animation.
Mm-hmm.
You might find it online. There's a show called Say Uncle.
Ah, I think I vaguely recall that show. Yeah.
It didn't get picked up, but they picked up another Seth MacFarlane show instead.
Well, I was going to mention before we lose you that one of my favorite TV characters I mentioned to you was Johnny Storm, the band leader from the Dick and Paula special. What a great show, and what a unique concept to interview famous weird people in history. That was a really clever idea of Tom Snyder.
Yeah, you know, I wrote a book about 20 years ago or 25 years ago called The To-Do Lists of the Dead. It opens with Abraham Lincoln, and his to-do list said, find fancy way to say 87 years ago, and that's checked off. Then free slaves is also checked off. And then beef up security at Forbes Theater.
Didn't get around to it.
No. But
he forgot to make a donation to the Actors Fund too. That would have helped.
Right.
Get headshots.
You know,
Headshots.
hey, Linda, have you ever listened to my podcast called Hey, We're Back?
No, I have not,
Oh,
and I should.
yeah, it's really it's full of. I only did 43 episodes, and then I stopped.
What's the name of it?
Hey, We're Back.
I'll put it on the post.
Yeah, but it's not celebrity driven. It's just whatever strikes me as funny that day, and it was kind of fun to do.
You've been amazing to have on. You're welcome back anytime you want to come on and plug anything.
Okay, Linda, you're such a gracious host.
You're a fabulous person to interview. I would love you back any old time with Jeffrey.
Okay.
This has been a huge thrill for me personally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I pretty much watch Dr. Katz every day. Like I can just rewatch them on YouTube all the time, and I just, you know, it just cheers me up. So thank you for cheering me up all the time.
Oh, really, it's easy to do it without getting out of bed.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of your stand-up. I had no idea you didn't enjoy it until you learned about doing improv with it.
Well, you know, I was so unspontaneous, Linda. I actually, as the audience was coming in, I handed them 3 heckles, and I had heckler number 1, number 2, and number 3, and I would call on them during my show because I was afraid of getting heckled so much. I had to be in control of that.
Wow. That's crazy great. Great information.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
I think my time is up.
Yes, thank you so very much, Jonathan Katz.
My
I
pleasure.
didn't. Can you play the music? I didn't hear the music. We're supposed to hear music before we
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
session's over.
You should play me off.
Thank
Oh, I thought there was a piano next to you, but it's not.
Thank you,
so
Dr.
much.
Katz.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been so great talking with you.
Take care of yourself. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Bye-bye.
Come back.